Hello? It's on. Can you hear me? No. Hello? Say hello. Hello?
Check, check. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
Swing it around. Yeah, pull it out.
Speak into the microphone. I'm speaking into the microphone. Hi, everyone. Welcome to those who are here with us in the Mishkan at Holy Blossom and those who are joining us virtually. It's great to have you here with us. My name is Lise Sklar, and I'm part of the Luke Sklar Mental Health Initiative at Holy Blossom Temple. Tonight, we're so pleased to host Jennifer Baldachin speaking about menopause and mental health, an evening of awareness, understanding, and support. This is part of our ongoing series of talks designed to provide education, support, and resources for those and their loved ones navigating mental health challenges. Our aim is to limit the stigma around mental illness and to encourage those who may be struggling to reach out and seek help. We're especially grateful tonight for the generous support from Women of Holy Blossom, who are co-sponsors of this program. Now for some quick logistics. Tonight's program will run until about 9 p.m. We'll hear a few words from Rabbi McCarroll, and then I'll introduce Jennifer. Following Jennifer's presentation, we'll have time for a Q&A. For those here, you'll be able to ask your questions directly. For those watching virtually, please type your questions into the chat box. They'll be asked anonymously, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. Please note that tonight's talk will be recorded for those who would like to view it at a later date. So for now, I'd like to welcome Rabbi Eliza McCarroll, who we're so grateful to have on our committee, and who will provide us with a Jewish lens on tonight's topic.
Thank you, Lise. So when thinking about tonight, I turned to our liturgy because every morning there's a series of blessings called the Birchot HaShachar, our blessings for those things which we take for granted every day. And in a more traditional approach to the liturgy, you would find the blessing, Shelo Asani Isha, that we thank God for not making us women. Why is that? It's explained that it is an expression of gratitude for being obligated to perform mitzvot, because women, again, more traditionally, are not obligated to perform many of the mitzvot. So it's saying, thank you for making me, or a man, able to perform mitzvot, someone who's able to do that. However, Rabbi Elise Goldstein, who some of you may actually remember from being here at Holy Blossom for a number of years, or our friend, our colleague, writes that when it comes to anything to do with being female, including her monthly cycle, she would recite, she kind of twisted the blessing to say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani isha. So blessed are you, O God, ruler of the universe, for making me a woman, to twist it on our head. So again, when thinking about tonight, I felt that this blessing felt appropriate, because by embracing our femininity and by acknowledging it, we make women's bodies less taboo and instead can focus on living happy and healthy lives where we feel supported, to use that word, at all stages of our life. This is exactly why I'm so grateful to the Luke Sklar Mental Health Initiative and to Dr. Jennifer Baldachin here at Holy Blossom for holding this conversation tonight about menopause and its mental health repercussions and effects. Together, I look forward to learning about and to breaking any stigmas that we might have so that we might celebrate everything about us that makes us special and powerful and unique as women and build that community of support and care. So together tonight, my prayer is that we can leave saying, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani isha. Thank you, O God, for making me a woman. To introduce Dr. Baldachin.
And as my three daughters would say, we are warriors. It's my pleasure now to introduce our speaker, Jennifer Baldachin. Jennifer is a registered social worker who has worked in the healthcare field for over 25 years, offering evidence-based psychotherapy for those seeking support for life changes, anxiety, depression, and PTSD. She's trained in multiple modalities and is certified as a menopause mental health practitioner. She works as the team lead for the Mind Station at MedCan, as well as providing private therapy and guided therapy through Mind Beacon. Please welcome Jennifer.
Thanks so much for having me, and welcome everybody who's online tonight. So I don't need to really start with this first screen that introduces myself, so thank you very much for doing that already. I'm also a wife, a mother of three kids as well as 2 dogs. I'm a runner, so I definitely keep myself busy. And I love learning. And I recently became a menopause mental health practitioner because of the transition that I was going through and my friends were going through, and none of us knew what was going on. So I wanted to learn about it. And then through the learning, I got certified, and now my whole practice is taking a turn. So this is the agenda that I have for tonight. There's a lot on the screen, but they're all important, and we're going to get to them all. So some people talk about the symptoms of menopause. I like to think of it more as the effects, because symptoms makes it sound like there's something wrong with you. So we're going to talk more about the effects of menopause. I know that a lot of people are interested in HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. Nowadays, they're also calling it MHT, which is menopause hormone therapy. I can touch on that for sure, but I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm going to be speaking more about the basics, which is why I called this talk tonight Menopause 101. My focus is really on the non-HRT treatments. So I want to talk about nutrition, exercise, sleep strategies, mood and mental health. And you'll see that that can all pertain to menopause and perimenopause, but these are also just life lessons that anybody can hopefully find some takeaways from tonight. And lastly, a really important piece is how to support your partner, because I'm finding more and more in my practice, men are coming to saying that their wives or their partners are starting to go through perimenopause, menopause, and they don't know what to do. So we'll touch on that near the end as well. And of course, there's always time for question and answers. So what is perimenopause and menopause? So first of all, from an age perspective, starts at around 41 and can end around 55, but can also go up to 65. So it's quite a large range, which is why it's so important to start talking about this, because a big part of your adult life is going to be affected by this. What ends up happening, as you all probably know, is that when women are born, girls are born, they have about 700,000 to 1 million eggs. So you're born with the full complement. And as you age and you have your periods, you lose your eggs. And so what happens with perimenopause is that your estrogen declines. Menopause itself is actually a one-day event. It's 365 days from your last period. So when you start noticing subtle changes, you're in perimenopause. Your 1-year event, your birthday, is menopause, and then everything after that is post-menopause. Now we know that the decline of estrogen is the ovaries, obviously, but we also have estrogen receptors in our brain. And you can see where I'm going with this. The amygdala controls your emotions. The hippocampus controls your memory center. The hypothalamus controls your body temperature. So what happens with that is you've got an internal barometer in your brain that keeps your temperature at a constant level. When the estrogen fluctuates, your body temperature fluctuates. Your brainstem affects your circadian rhythm and your melatonin, so that's going to control when you go to sleep and when you're awake. So you've got your estrogen from your ovaries, but you've got the estrogen receptors in your brain. So just from the people here, because it's easier to talk to the people here right now in the chairs, what are some of the common symptoms of perimenopause or menopause that you know? Lise.
Sweating like crazy.
Okay.
In the night.
Hot flashes or sweating at night.
Mood swings.
Mood swings. Acne. Yep. Irregular periods. So some of the most common ones when we think of perimenopause and menopause are the ones you mentioned. Hot flashes, sometimes people call it a flush, as opposed to a flash because it flushes up your body. Brain fog is a really common one, and this is not the beginning of dementia. A lot of people worry that it's the beginning of dementia, but it is brain fog, and the good news is it does come back. Weight gain is a very common one. I was expecting someone to mention that one, where all of a sudden you wake up and you've got a tummy, which you never had before. Joint stiffness, mood swings, which you mentioned, insomnia. And insomnia is not waking up and worrying. Insomnia is waking up at 2 a.m. and being wide awake, just awake. And vaginal dryness. But symptoms of perimenopause or menopause affect every system of the body. The reproductive system, obviously, the central nervous system, respiratory system, musculoskeletal system, your metabolism, your body composition, the digestive system, and the inflammation system. So this is why it's an important thing to talk about, because it's not just one or two things. There's actually more than 34 symptoms. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to have all 34 symptoms, but out of the checklist, you're going to have a couple. And if you think about what you experienced in PMS, that's probably how your body handles hormones, and that's probably what you're going to end up having in some form. So what are some other symptoms or effects of perimenopause or regular menopause? And the reason I'm making a big deal about this is I want to normalize it, because people think they're going crazy. Or after the fact, they're like, oh, that's why this was happening. So I really want to put it out on the table just to normalize that your body is going through a transition. And these are all the things that you need to recognize are coming from what's happening. So lack of energy, that could be because you're not sleeping at night. Muscle and joint aches. So we've got estrogen receptors in our joints, which is why some women talk about frozen shoulder. Osteoarthritis can also happen, where you've got pain in your fingers and your toes. Bladder control, that's a fun one. Sneezing, coughing, and running. Heightened depression, heightened anxiety. And that could be just, you always had like a little bit, but now it's really exacerbated, where you're having panic attacks for no reason. And we see this even at work, where you're going into a board meeting, you're going into a presentation, and all of a sudden you have imposter syndrome, and you just don't know how you're going to get through it. So we're not just talking about a little bit of worry, even though it could be a little bit of worry, but it can also be as heightened as panic attacks. Thinning hair, dry skin. And the dry skin is also every mucous membrane you have in your body. So we're talking eyes, nose, mouth, and vaginal area, which of course can then lead to painful sex. Less frequent or heavier periods, either side. UTIs and bladder infections is another symptom. Hot flashes or cold sweats. This one became very popular recently on Instagram, the don't care filter. A lot of people are posting that. I can see people are smiling. There's no filter. You just say whatever is on your mind. As I mentioned, osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, so bone density. What's really interesting about this is that historically, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but historically, you'd have a woman who would go to a gynecologist because of painful sex, would go to the family doctor, get antibiotics because of the bladder infections, would go to the eye doctor for getting drops in her eyes, instead of realizing that they are all connected. So it's a waste of our time and a waste of resources to constantly be going to all these different professionals when really it's one issue. I'm not saying you don't need to go to the specific professionals if that's what you need, but it's important to recognize that there's a lot on this list that I sure didn't know about. Yes, there's another list. Now we're looking at the emotional or cognitive symptoms or effects of menopause. What does all this mean? Well, there's a lot of frustration over your body composition. So you've eaten the way you've always eaten, you've exercised the way you've always exercised, and then all of a sudden you've got a muffin top. And that's really, really frustrating, and that can affect your sense of self. You've always looked in the mirror, you've always identified yourself in a certain way, and then all of a sudden you're really frustrated. And the reason for that, by the way, it's a bit of a biological hack. We've got a very low-grade estrogen that's found in visceral fat. So when we wake up all of a sudden and see that we've got a tummy, it's our body that's trying to help us. There's a loss of identity of motherhood. I had a client who was in her late 50s who started to cry because she couldn't have kids anymore. And I looked at her and I'm like, would you actually want to have a child right now? And she was like, no, but that door is closed. And I'm like, yeah. But it's this loss of identity of, I'm not needed anymore. You know, doing the lunches, tying the shoes, making the bed. It's an identity. There's also the sandwich generation. You're worrying about your children, you're worrying about your elderly parents, and you're in the middle. I mentioned earlier the anxiety and the hot flashes at work. Isolation. If you're not having intimate relations with your husband or your partner because it's uncomfortable, you can start to lose that connection. And one of the things I talk about in my practice too is how do you build connection and intimacy with your partner without having sex? Because that's important. You're tired all the time, not feeling as sharp. That could definitely affect you at work, where you're being offered a promotion and again you have this imposter syndrome because you're just feeling fluffy. I tell you, Friday afternoon I'm playing a lot of charades. And obviously living with chronic pain. If you have frozen shoulder, you've got back pain, you've got osteoarthritis, and you're sitting all day, you're trying to type. Or it could be impacting your hobbies of wanting to do sports. I'm a marathon runner. I'm getting osteoarthritis in my big toe. It's going to affect my running. So even the things that I want to do outside of work are going to be affected. So I want to talk a little bit about the financial considerations of why it's so important to be talking about menopause and perimenopause, and I think also why it's so popular right now to be talking about this. In 2023, which was only 2 years ago, the Menopause Foundation of Canada released a report called Menopause and Work in Canada, and they reported $3.5 billion economic impact due to unmanaged symptoms. Loss of productivity, missed days of work, reducing hours or leaving the workforce altogether, taking lesser roles. And I had a client who actually declined a promotion because the majority of her office were men. And she thought that if she had to stand up and talk to the board and all of a sudden she started having a hot flash, people would look at her and think that she was incompetent, she was nervous, she didn't know what she was doing, and so she declined getting that promotion. In 2024, the study of women in BC influence of menopause and how well people feel at work, and they noticed that 32% presence of menopause symptoms affect their jobs, 24.8% missed days of work in the last 12 months, 10% reported turning down a job promotion or career advancement in the last 6 months. So this isn't just us feeling hot. This is actually an impact in our work and our family lives. So I know the HRT or MRT is a big conversation. So let's talk a little bit about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Those are the three. So let's talk about the history of menopause, because that's really fun. In 1821, we first got this word, menopause. Men, it's Greek, by the way, men is month, and poen is to cease or stop. So they're not wrong. It is stopping. They felt that PMS was caused by the suffocation of the womb, filling with blood, and that the blood was getting higher and higher. So what do you do when you're filled with blood and it's not coming out? Well, you bloodlet, of course. They used arsenic, opium, exorcism, because obviously women were having mood swings, so they put them in this sane asylum. This is how we started. In 1934, and that's a big jump from 1821. They discovered estrogen. Greek, again, it's a Greek word, ostros, which means frenzy or mad desire. You can tell who created these words. In 1940, we had estradiol. And in 1942, we had the first approved drug, Premarin, which had progesterone came later, but they were tied. In 1966, so one of my favorite books is Lisa Mosconi's Menopause Brain, which is this one here. It's an amazing book. It talks about science, but it's something that anybody could read, understand. She talks about the history of menopause. And she quoted Robert Wilson, who's a doctor, who said that the menopause was seen as a natural plague, crippled castrates, but with estrogen replacement, the breasts and genital organs would not shrivel. He's describing women on estrogen. She will be much more pleasant to live with and will not become dull or unattractive. In 1969, it was really promoted, getting hormone replacement, because once the ovaries stop, the very essence of being a woman stops. A postmenopausal woman comes as close as she can to being a man. Not really a man, but not longer a functional woman. So you can see where this is heading. So in 1992, Premarin was the #1 prescribed drug in the US, sales exceeding $1 billion. Weth Pharmaceuticals, which is now owned by Pfizer, promoted that women would now become vibrant and sexy at their postmenopausal life. So it was really promoted in every possible news source it could be. And everybody was buying into this, right? And then we get into the 2002 Women's Health Initiative. Have you all heard about 2002, the Women's Health Initiative? Okay, so what happened was there was this huge study over years, 64,000 women and an extra 100,000 more were studied, both taking estrogen, testosterone, or placebo. And I don't know if you noticed this or not, but the age they tested was between 50 and 79, with the average age being 63. So already, a red light should be flashing here for you, because perimenopause tends to start at 41, right? Once you hit menopause, you're usually in your early to mid-50s. And yet here, the average age was 63, so there's a problem. What happened was they were focusing on preventing heart disease and cancer, but in 2002, they started to notice that there were 130 new stories about the risks. 26% increase of breast cancer, heart disease, and stroke and dementia all rose. So all the doctors who were pushing estrogen and progesterone quickly pulled it off the shelves and said, no, this is dangerous for you. But again, the problem was they chose the wrong population to study. So a lot of these women who were 63-ish already were on their way to having heart disease, were already on their way to having cancer, even potentially dementia. So what's really interesting, if they said 6 additional women a year for every 10,000 who took HRT, well, that's the same as having 2 or 3 glasses of alcohol a day, or even obesity. But depending on how you're going to spin the statistics, it was fear-mongering. So everyone obviously jumped off. And there are still people today who are very nervous about this. So estrogen comes in 2 different forms. You can have it orally, which is a pill. That goes through to the liver, and it can affect your body. There's also transdermal, which goes right into the bloodstream. So I know some people worry about breast cancer, if they're a survivor, if they have it in their family. You have to check with your family doctor if this would work for you. But every woman, regardless of what their history is, can take the transdermal. So the thing that you have to remember with any kind of hormone replacement therapy or hormone therapy is that it is symptom relief. You don't need to take it, and it's not preventative. They are finding some prevention, which I guess I'll talk about this on another screen. But for the most part, it's really about symptom control. Progesterone, if you have a uterus, you have to take progesterone with your estrogen. If you've had a hysterectomy, you don't have to have progesterone. It protects the uterus from uterine cancer. And testosterone is a fairly new medication that they're adding to the regime, and that helps with libido the most, but it can help with some other areas too. And that tends to be a cream. But the problem is with testosterone is it's not really, they haven't studied it enough yet, so they don't know how much you need. So they just say, give a little dab. Like, okay. You don't really have to worry about getting hair on that spot. Some people worry about that, or, your voice dropping. We're not talking that much. You're just talking a little bit. So the facts of hormone replacement is that it's going to help you with your symptoms. It's going to help with the hot flashes for sure. It can reduce potentially the risk of colon cancer. It does help osteoporosis. It can reduce cataracts, definitely reduces hot flashes. The most common thing people will say is, I feel like myself again. That's the most common thing people say. There can be less depression, anxiety. Definitely the genital urinary symptoms. So that's the bladder infection, UTIs, painful sex. What's interesting is people wonder if it's going to help with the brain fog and the weight gain, and the answer is no. But if you're up all night because you're having hot flashes and you can't sleep, and then you wake up really tired, so you're eating junk food to try to give yourself a little pick-me-up, or you're really tired, so you're not going to the gym, and then all of a sudden you start taking this and you can sleep through the night, then the brain fog and the weight gain may help. So we've talked a lot about what we don't have control over. Let's talk a little bit about what we do have control over. And these are non-hormone therapies. What we eat, how we move, our sleep, and CBT strategies. And CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. So the best, I don't want to call it a diet, but way of eating is the Mediterranean diet. And that you can see is colorful fruits, vegetables. Think of what they eat in the Mediterranean countries. This is what is really going to help with holding dementia at bay, as well as the physical and mental effects of menopause. So leafy green, colorful vegetables slow the rate of cognitive decline. Berries protect the brain cells and reduce inflammation in your system. Nuts improve memory and concentration, so things like walnuts. And pistachios actually have a natural melatonin in them. So having a handful of pistachios can really help with sleep. Protein helps build muscle. We need muscle to help protect our joints, and that's also going to help you with the osteoporosis. Water is so important. It decreases dizziness, confusion, fatigue. It also keeps the joints fluid. Your skin and your hair will be hydrated. It helps your digestion, pushes things along in your circulation. It regulates your body temperature. So water is like one of the most important things. I'm sure you've all heard of carb comas and sugar crash. What you eat is going to affect your mood. So the more you can keep your blood sugar level, the more resilient you're going to feel. So when things are happening and you're getting thrown for the day, you know you can deal with that. Less unhealthy cravings or late night snacking is also going to impact your sleep, and sleep is going to build the resiliency. We'll talk about that one soon. Some foods to limit. Be aware of alcohol and caffeine, and spicy foods can increase hot flashes if that's something you're struggling with. Alcohol can also affect anxiety and depression. It affects the same hormones in your brain. Caffeine stays in your system for 10 hours, so that again is going to affect your sleep. Processed foods, red meat, refined sugars, simple carbs, I know you guys know all this, fried and fast foods, not healthy for you. One of my favorite topics, exercise. So exercise is one of the best things you can do for mental health. The reason is that if you are stressed, your brain always interprets stress as danger. If you're about to get mugged, the first thing you're going to do is hold your breath. You're going to go, And then your sympathetic nervous system is going to kick into gear to protect you. So your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your muscles get tense, you stop digesting food, and your body gets ready to fight, run away, or hide. Fight, flight, freeze. But when you breathe, it tells your brain you're safe. So when you're exercising, you're breathing. And that's why you always feel calmer after. It's also a healthy distraction. You're not thinking about work. You're not thinking about family. You're just focusing on the exercise. It's also an accomplishment. You can own it and you can say, I did this today. So it's instant gratification that you know you've done. It builds muscle mass, which again is going to protect your joints. It's going to help you with the osteoporosis, the bone density. You'd think that exercise is going to increase your body temperature, but it actually is shown that it reduces your severe hot flashes by 28%. I don't know if that's because you're drinking more water or if you're just regulating your body temperature, but it statistically is going to reduce your hot flashes. You're probably going to sleep better, you're going to be in a better mood, and you are going to have better memory. So 30% lower risk of developing dementia. And part of that is the mind-body connection. You also know that you can do difficult tasks. So what distraction, what mindfulness means when it comes to exercise? When I used to do personal training, and my trainer used to yell at me, which was embarrassing because it was in front of a gym, and he kept yelling, focus, focus. And I say, I am focusing. He goes, what are you thinking about? I said, this is heavy. I'm tired. How many more reps do I have to do? And he said, no. Focus is, are your arms braced? Is your core tight? Are you breathing? I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So that is the distraction. That's the focus. You focus on what you are doing. When I run, I can listen to music, which is a nice distraction. But you can also run, look at the color of the sky, feel the air on your face. Notice how your heart is beating. Notice your breathing. Then you're paying it, that's practicing mindfulness. You're present. You're not thinking about what you just left or what you're going to. You're in the moment. The best way to increase exercise, and this is really about any kind of goal setting, is to develop SMART goals. Specific, meaningful, attainable, realistic, and timed. Don't just wing it and think, I want to start exercising, because you won't. What you're going to do is you have to think about what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how often you're going to do it for, where and why. So if you know you're going to exercise 3 times a week in the morning, you're going for a 20-minute walk in the neighborhood, you don't have to think anymore. It's already done. So really try to think about all the specifics, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. I'm sure everybody has some sleep questions. So let's talk a little bit about sleep hygiene and falling back to sleep when you wake up. So sleep hygiene is not just the hour before you go to bed. Sleep hygiene is how you live your complete day. So that means if you're working really, really hard and you're up here high octane, you can't all of a sudden hope to go to sleep down here. You have to build your way down. So that means taking breaks. It might be a simple break, is like drink lots of water, and that forces you to get up and go to the washroom. That gets you away from your computer. But take little breaks, have a snack, eat your lunch, and that's going to help, just deal with the stress during the day. Reduce your caffeine and alcohol intake. So caffeine, like I said, stays in your system for 10 hours. Everyone's metabolism is different. Some people can have a cappuccino after dinner and be fine. Other people can't have coffee after 12 o'clock. Alcohol is going to make you tired because it affects the depression hormones in your brain. But after about 3 hours, it wears off and it interrupts your REM sleep. So you're going to feel like you're napping as opposed to getting deep sleep. Monitor eating before bed. Food gives you energy. You don't need energy when you're going to sleep. So don't eat before bed. The other thing is your body's going to be trying to digest the food instead of letting you rest. Sticking to a sleep schedule is very important, even on weekends. Know when you want to wake up and then work backwards to know when you need to be going to sleep. Everyone's amount of sleep is different. It's somewhere between 6.5 to 8 hours. The way you know is if you wake up in the morning, you have your coffee, you sort of shake off your sleep. If you feel kind of jet lagged, it means you're either underslept or overslept. If you feel ready to go, it means you've had enough. Make sure you have a buffer between work and sleep. You need a bedtime routine. Just like children do, they have a bath, you read them a story, they get into their pajamas. It's a routine, it teaches them it's time to let go of the day. You have to do the same for yourself. You can't just work and then expect to go to sleep, because your mind is still going to be humming in the background, thinking about what you just left. Limiting screen time in bed is a hard one to break, but very important. And the reason is when we look outside and it's dark out, that signals our circadian rhythm and our melatonin goes up. We're ready to go sleep. The blue light on our apps and our phones mimics daylight, and so that reduces the melatonin in your brain. So on one hand, you're saying, oh, it's dark out, it's time to go to bed. And then you look at your phone, and you're like, no, it's time to wake up. So again, that's going to keep you awake. Some women struggle with hot flashes at night. Sleep on a towel. So if you're sweating through, you don't have to change your sheets in the middle of the night. Just take the towel off. You can also wear bedclothes that you can easily change. And if there was a sleep doctor, Chris Winter, I wrote down his book for you all for later. It's called Sleep Solution. He says that if you're awake and you're relaxed, then you're still getting the restorative effects of sleep. It's fine, don't worry about it. But if you're starting to struggle and get frustrated, then it's better to get out of bed. Do something different for 15 minutes that's mindless, that doesn't involve work, and then try again. So what happens if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're having a hard time falling back to sleep? Well, one really good technique to try is something called progressive muscle relaxation. So when you're lying in bed, think about the different touch points of your body on the mattress, what's touching the mattress, and just let your body sink into the mattress. And then systematically, progressively, go through muscle by muscle, relaxing your muscles. So you could think about your forehead, relaxing your forehead, feeling how heavy your eyelids feel, relaxing your jaw, relaxing your neck and your shoulders and your arms, and just slowly go down your body. And if your mind wanders, just come back and do it again. Some people will start at the bottom of their feet, go to the top of the heads. Some people start at the top of the heads, go to the bottom. I did one, Peloton has a really good app, and they do some breathing exercises. Insight Timer is a free app. They have a really nice one as well. Another app is called Calm, where you can start at the front of your body, slowly go up the top of your body, and then slowly go down the back of your body. What you're doing is you're relaxing your muscles to get ready to go back to sleep, and you're distracting yourself with the thoughts of your muscles. So that's a good one. Another version of visualizations is to think of a place that you know really well that makes you feel happy, warm, comfortable, and think of everything you can about that place. How you got there, what you see, what you hear, who's with you. And again, if your body is relaxed, you're distracting yourself, you will go back to sleep. I have some people in my practice that talk about going to their cottage. I sometimes think about a 5K run around my neighborhood, putting on my running shoes, going to the back door, going out to the end of my driveway, turning left. I know every hill, I know every bump in the road, and I just, in my mind, I do my run. I know one client who said that he pictures finding his favorite parking place to go golfing. And he opens up his trunk and he puts on his golf shoes, and you want to draw it out for as long as possible, is what I'm trying to tell you. And again, if it's your happy place, you're going to relax and fall asleep. Another version, again, it's all the same kind of thing. It's distraction and it's helping you go to sleep. Counting in word patterns. You can just breathe in slowly, think of the number 1, breathe out. Breathe in slowly, think of the number 2, and breathe out. Go to 5 and then restart again at 1. I don't like the idea of starting at 100 and going backwards, because once you get to 70, you start to worry. This is taking a long time. How much longer is it going to take? What if I get to, this isn't working? And then you're not thinking about counting anymore. So just go 1 to 5, 1 to 5, 1 to 5. Another one I believe the Navy SEALs use is to take a word, just a random word like bread, And then think of all the words you can think of that start with each letter. So how many words can you think of that start with the letter B? How many words can you think of that start with the letter R? And because none of these words associate with one another, then again, you just fall asleep. I want to talk a little bit about CBT, and that's cognitive behavioral therapy. And what that says is that we have thoughts, we have feelings or emotions, and we have behaviors. And you can see it's a triangle. That means each point of the triangle impacts the other point. So here's an example. Your child moves out. Your thoughts are, I'm not relevant, I'm not needed. The feelings could be sad and lonely. And the action is, I'm going to stay in bed, I'm going to snack, and I'm going to limit seeing friends. Or your thoughts could be, I'm really proud of her. The feelings are calm and proud. The action is, I'm going to walk the dog, I'm going to cook dinner, I'm going to connect with my friends. So sometimes all you have to do is challenge one of those corners. What am I thinking? What's real? What's perceived? Sometimes that's hard. You're more sensitive to how you're feeling. If you're feeling tense, you're feeling anxious, then breathe. Try to relax the tension in your body, and then your thoughts are going to clear. Or if you can't challenge your thoughts or your feelings, challenge your behaviors. Get out of the house, go walk the dog, go see your friends, and then maybe the thoughts and the feelings are going to be impacted. So they all can impact each other. Your perception matters. And here's an example, again, that I'm going to use with hot flashes. I had a client who said, I have the worst hot flashes. I can't sleep at all, and they last forever. I was like, wow, that's hard. I want you to chart how bad they are, how often you get them, and how long they last. And she came back to me, and she said, well, I had 3 of them, and they lasted 5 minutes. I was like, okay. So it felt like they lasted forever. It felt like she wasn't getting any sleep. So we have to look at our perception of the event. Now, I'm not talking about gaslighting yourself, because the reality is they're horrible and they're impacting you. But we also have to challenge that inner narrative. So the beliefs about the self, like this client I told you about at work, everyone will look at me. Everybody handles it better than me. Beliefs about coping. If I can't sleep, I'll have a horrible day tomorrow. Well, you have to start to think about that. Are people looking at you? If you can't sleep, yeah, you're going to be tired. Maybe you'll have to proofread that email. But is it going to be a horrible day? Like, really look at it and start to question what you're telling yourself. Be more realistic. I know it will pass after 5 minutes. That gives you some control. You now know that it's hard, but it will end. You can also try to concentrate on other things, distract yourself. You can also try to just accept that this is a hard time right now. And what can you control? I can put my hair up in a ponytail. I can wear multiple layers, that kind of thing. That's my dog. You can change your mood. You can remind yourself of all that you have accomplished. You can remind yourself of who and what lifts you up, what makes you feel good. You can watch TV. You can watch funny memes. You can read. You can surround yourself with pets and people who lift you up. You have to remind yourself that this will pass. It is not forever. And you have to look at what you have control over, what you're eating, how you're moving, and sleep strategies. Instead of focusing on the past and what you've lost, it's really important to focus on the next stage. They call this a menopause transition because we are transitioning into another version of ourselves. We now have the opportunity to focus on what interests us. We don't have to worry about making lunches anymore and making beds and picking up kids and dropping off kids. We can focus on who we want to spend time with, what we want to do with our time. We can practice gratitude. We don't have to have periods anymore. So the last thing I want to talk about tonight is how to support our partners. We're just learning about what we're going through right now. So when our partner's turning to us and saying, how can I support you? They need to learn too. So we have to learn together, and maybe we can share what we're learning. One thing I tell partners is to empathize and be patient. Ask your partner how they're doing and listen. Not try to fix or solve, but just listen and ask open-ended questions. What was that like? How did you deal with that? Recognize that her body is going through transitions and changes in every way, as I mentioned, from head to toe. And that's okay. You can ask questions, you can just be there. Communicate. Spend the time just talking about what is going on right now. Sometimes there can be misunderstandings, especially with relationships, because she's tired, she's moody, there's problems with the sexual intimacy, there's sleep deprivation, but doesn't mean she doesn't love you. It just means she's not in the mood. And that's where we can talk about how you can be intimate without having sex. Support them in a healthy lifestyle. Join them in making healthy lifestyle choices. Support them with exercise, eating healthy, self-care, less alcohol. So these are some of my favorite books and resources. The Menopause Brain, which I mentioned, by Lisa Mosconi. She's a brain scientist, and she shows MRIs. She talks about, one of the fun parts in that book too, she talks about the 3 Ps when we sort of have that brain fog. It was puberty, pregnancy, and perimenopause, where our brains kind of shrink a little, get a little tired, and then grow stronger. But it's a great book. The Menopause Manifesto by Jen Gunter. A little more scientific, a little bit harder to read, but really good. Dare I Say It is a fun book by Naomi Watts, who's the Hollywood actress. More pop psychology, but an easy read. She talks about what it's like to be menopausal in Hollywood and how hard it was for her to hide it. And at the end of each chapter, she says things she wished she had known. Sleep Solution by Chris Winter, and then there's 3 websites there that talk about menopause. Thank you for listening. So if you have any specific questions you want to email me, I have my email address there, jbaldishincounseling@gmail.com. Just as my own plug, I do see personal therapy clients. I also want to do more of these kind of talks and going into agencies and companies and talking to, at MedCan, I work with execs. I want to be able to do more of this because I think it's really important to get the word out and talk to more people and just reduce the stigma. But please ask me questions.
Can I just suggest that everyone, Julie will hand the mic here if anyone has questions. And if you're at home watching virtually, type your questions into the chat box.
Carly said, woo, what a great job. Okay, so one of the questions that we have here is, can you take HRT forever? I know there's a window, an age window, where you actually can start to take it and then it ends at a certain time. Do you know about that?
For starting hormone replacement, you have to be either under 60 years old or within the first 10 years of menopause. So those two things can overlap. You can be 62 or 63 if it's within that first 10 years of menopause. So it should be, again, that's when you start. As for when it ends, you can be on it forever. It really doesn't matter. The one thing I just learned recently is for people who have the hormonal IUD, who are using it for birth control, that I believe the hormones for the birth control can last for 10 years before you need to replace it. But if you're using the hormones in the IUD for menopause symptoms, that needs to be replaced after 5 years because it's not as strong later.
Thank you. Another question is, what's the difference between bioidentical hormones and those that a family doctor might prescribe?
That goes beyond my expertise. But the two books that I mentioned, The Menopause Brain and The Menopause Manifesto, there's a whole chapter in that.
Great.
So I don't actually, there's also this handout I brought with me. This might actually say it. Give me a moment.
And just to tell everyone that your list of handouts will be coming to them tomorrow, and that list is on there as well.
Yeah, I don't remember.
That's okay. Somebody online asked about brittle hair, specifically, I guess, with the hair loss or changes in your hair. What do you do?
Yeah, it's true. That is one of the symptoms or effects where people will find that their hair all of a sudden becomes very thin. Again, you want to use good quality shampoos, conditioners, things. You don't want to shampoo your hair every day. You can use conditioner every day, but you don't want to dry it out. You want to eat, again, the Mediterranean diet, those healthy fats like the avocados, the salmons, the omega-3 type supplements. There are some natural supplements you can take that are going to help with skin and hair care, but that's just one of the things.
You talked about sharing information with your partner. I find it was a challenge with my children for them to accept. I mean, I have all boys, but they just don't want to hear about it. So how do you approach that with your own children?
Just that we're going through this, a lot of apologizing. Actually, I should ask my daughter how I think that it is really important to just accept the fact, like, your boys growing up are going to know that you had PMS, and their girlfriends are going to PMS, and their friends who are girls are going to PMS. And that's kind of like what we're going through right now, but sort of like an older version of PMS. So I think part of it is being authentic and coming in and saying, I had a really bad day. I need 5 minutes to sort of have quiet before I can deal with A, B, and C, and being able to say that.
Yes, thank you. I've tried to be frank. That's a good idea. Somebody asked, what should 20-year-olds, is this the one? Is that your question? No. Okay. What should 20-year-olds be thinking about now to prepare for the future?
That's a really good question, especially because I think we in this room are starting late. And we're talking about bone density, heart health, body composition, brain health, all of that starts when they're in their 20s and 30s. I spent the majority of my adult life thinking I wanted to look a certain way. And I shouldn't have been thinking about wanting to look thin. I should have been thinking about wanting to be strong. And I think we really need to focus on strength. And I think that is turning now in social media, how important muscles are, and to be healthy, not to be skinny. Because if we fall down, we have to be able to stand up. We can't break a hip. because then that's going to set off all kinds of problems. So I think now it's really, just like we've taught our children to expect getting their periods and what menstruation is going to look like and how you're going to have bloating and you're going to have cravings and don't worry, it's going to pass, and getting them prepared for that, it's all just part of our education to teach our children, boys and girls, that this is what we do. Like, we're lucky, if you are lucky enough to live to the point of hitting menopause, and that's another thing I was going to mention earlier, is that that's why we're studying it now. Because, hundreds of years ago, women died in pregnancy. We're only now lucky enough to live this long, and we have doctors who are women who are experiencing it themselves, or they are taking the time to listen to their patients who are complaining. We have the medical, diagnostic tools. We've got MRIs. We have the science now that we can actually try to understand what is going on.
Hi. Looking at your list for all the symptoms, I swear I experience like half of those on a daily basis, and I'm not 30. And how would somebody know that they're starting perimenopause? Because when I'm at the age that I would be experiencing those symptoms, and they are perimenopausal symptoms, how does one know that, okay, I'm beginning this whole transitional chapter in my life, or no, I need to go see a doctor for my thinning hair, or I need to see a doctor because now I'm having, I'm getting more, whatever it might be, more UTIs or whatever this might be. How do you have clients that kind of have anxiety around just, is this normal life symptoms or is this perimenopausal symptoms? Because I know even with the hormone replacement drugs, that has to do with, within 10 years. And how do you know when that kind of time frame starts?
Yeah, good question. Like I said, most perimenopause can start at around 41 onwards. So if you are, you can have early perimenopause. If you're sort of checking off enough boxes, it never hurts to go ask your doctor questions. One or two things could be situational. Yes, stress is going to affect your sleep. Stress is going to affect your hair. Stress is going to affect a lot of those different things. So you can also do a little bit of ruling it out yourself, saying, well, I'm not sleeping, but it makes sense because I'm stressed at work. If you are, one of, I think, the telltale signs is your period is just really wonky. It's if you're always regular and then all of a sudden you don't get your period for 2 or 3 months and you're not pregnant, then you're going, oh, that's odd. Yeah. It doesn't hurt. I mean, that's the nice thing about OHIP. Go ask your doctor. It can't hurt. But one thing I just might mention, some people ask about blood tests. Can you have a blood test to see if you're perimenopausal or menopausal? And the answer is no. I mean, they try to promote it because it's like a moneymaker, but the reality is you can't, because your hormones are always in flux. So if you get your blood test when your estrogen is really high, it's going to seem normal, and then a couple days later it may tank. But if you had had your blood test done on that day, it would have shown up very differently. So you can't really. There are ways to do the blood test. Like, you have to be really specific. You have to know when you had your last period, and then it has to be so many days after. Like, it's a really tight window. But the first thing you'd look at is if your periods are really kind of out of whack, and then you also have some of these other effects too.
Okay, thank you. You're sharing a lot of great information. One thing I remember happening in the past now was, like you said, it needs to be a year without a period before you're in menopause. And that feeling like, okay, I'm at 6 months, I'm at 7 months, I'm at 8 months, and then I get my period, and I'm back at 0.
Yep.
So just maybe you have some strategies for people, like, how do you deal with that? Because I remember it being very
It's
deflating.
frustrating. You think you're finally at the finish line, you're finally done. But the reality is, the longer you have your period, the better it is for your body, because it means that your bone density is stronger, and your heart health, your brain composite, all of that, dementia, potential dementia in the future, the longer you do get your period, the better it is for your body. So you have to kind of go, yay. And you're right, you have to restart it, counting the clock again. But even the frustrating thing is, even when you hit menopause and you're like, yeah, I did it, you can still have all those symptoms. They don't go away the next day. Like, you can still have the brain fog and the hot flashes and the insomnia. Eventually, it will regulate, and a lot of this stuff is going to go away, but it doesn't happen day one of menopause. So you still may be menopausal for, 2 years before everything finally settles down, but at least you know you're on the track. Yeah.
Back to the what to tell the 20-year-olds. I would say because of the loss of estrogen when one is menopausal, I would tell the 20-year-olds, get as much exercise, build up as much bone density as possible. Exercise, do things, be active when you're young, so that you've got a good, firm foundation.
Correct.
For when you're starting to lose estrogen.
And the frustrating thing, too, is when we're looking at bone density, what that means is it has to be weight-bearing exercises. It means lifting weights and walking. And being a runner, it's really frustrating because that's not going to help me. But I have to trick myself into doing the weights, thinking, well, if I do weights, it's going to help me with my running. So you got to talk yourself into it somehow.
Is running not weight-bearing?
Yeah.
You'd think it is, but it's not, because running is a one-legged sport. You're kind of going one leg at a time, and a lot of it is like in the air. I would disagree, but
I don't think this is a question that you can answer, but let's say you go on HRT in your 30s because of osteoporosis, and you've been on HRT forever, and is it possible that you may not even realize you've gone through menopause because you're not really getting many symptoms?
yeah, and I've had clients when I've looked at their age and I'd ask them, are you perimenopausal or menopausal? And they don't know because they've had the hormonal IUD. So it is complicated, but again, when we're looking at hormone replacement therapy, it's very much symptom relief. So if you have the insomnia, if you have hot flashes, and they're bothering you, then you want to have hormone replacement that's going to help you feel more comfortable. Or if you have anxiety or depression, you can go on antidepressants, anti-anxiety pills, you can go on hormone replacement therapy, and that will make you feel more comfortable. If you're not having symptoms, then don't worry about it.
Yeah, there's more along the lines of, is it possible you may not know you've gone through menopause?
Yep. But if you've stopped having your period and you're in that age range, you're probably menopausal.
Are there any more questions? Everybody good? Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's okay. Just put it in there somehow or hold on to it. So, Jennifer, thank you. We're so grateful for your work in preparing for tonight's presentation. And as a way of showing our appreciation, I think I told you we've made a donation to Movember in your honor. Thanks to the amazing Luke Sklar Mental Health Initiative volunteers. Thanks to all who attended tonight, both at home and virtually. We really appreciate your support. Tomorrow, all of you will receive an email containing resources which Jennifer has kindly offered to share. So the slide that was up there, along with an additional resource, will be in that email tomorrow. There also will be a follow-up survey. And your feedback is so important to us in our planning. There will be an opportunity to list any topics you might be interested in hearing about. So let us know. We really value that input. So if you're here in person, help yourself to some snacks, but not if you're going to bed right away. And if you're at home, thank you for joining us. Okay.